department when somebody else. there were 5 things on the agenda. Is anybody from Classified Holdings here this evening? Okay. And we had one of them that asked to come in July instead of June. Sibylla. Anyone here for that application? Okay. We're going to start with application number 5, public hearing of Andrew T. Is it pronounced Ford? Ford, yes. Okay. Regarding property located in the SM District at 118 Woods Road, Greenwood Lake, New York, 10925, and designated on the town tax map as Section 78, Block 3, Lot 30, with an area variance from Town Code 164-40N and 164-41C4 for the reconstruction of a family dwelling with a proposed front porch setback of 24 feet where 30 feet are required. Would you come up and state your name for the record and mailings?
Yes, his name is Andrew Ford.
I'll take the mailings.
Just tell us a little bit about the application.
Well, my house was taken down by the tornado May 23rd.
I'm sorry, what was your name, sir?
Andrew Ford. And, this letter came out.
Yeah, I think that was wrong. Thank you. No, I don't need it.
Yeah, the house was taken down, it was a cabin, was taken down during the tornado last year. And it was just unbuildable. The tree came down, took the whole place down with me in it.
Lucky you're still here.
Gotten over the fact that I'm not dead. And Joe Racy, the local architect, drew up when we were on the same exact footprint. And Joe drew a deck out the front of the house, which I asked him to do. We were 50 feet off the road. It didn't even occur to me that we weren't within boundaries. And so we wanted to build a 10-foot deck across the front of the house. And apparently after going through the town, I found that I needed to get a survey done, a new survey. My other survey didn't show the frontage. I had an engineer, Brian Freeling.
Yes.
So Brian didn't take off. He said that you are so many feet back, but the town engineer didn't want that, so I got McGloin, Bob McGloin did the survey for me. And it turns out that the deck was 6 feet closer. I had 50 feet from the street to the house, but I guess the town owns the first 20 feet or something. So I'm 6 feet over on the deck, and I'd like to, that's the variance I'm seeking.
You know, to your benefit, the houses, when they were built at that time, didn't have that setback. And then later on, we increased the setback and several times now. So a lot of them are at 75 feet. But what happens in an area that's been built up so many years ago, most of them, and yours is a great example, are considerably closer to the road. Some of them just 30 feet off.
Well, I'm
So,
way back, yeah.
yeah, so you're considerably back further than anybody, not anybody, but most of the houses in that area.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, most of my neighbors with decks are much closer. It's existing conditions.
so, before we open it up to the public, does anybody have any questions or comments?
One question, when I went down and looked at the property, wrote by the property, is the new building going on the old footprint?
The exact old footprint.
It is.
You know,
Okay,
the only thing we-
that was my only
The other thing
question.
we did was square out the corner, as in the two that burned down the
Yep.
street. That had a staircase that went up and the corner was sort of cut out. So we just squared that corner.
Squared it. Okay.
And took that little 10 by 10 corner, because that stair is no longer applicable.
Okay.
But other than that, it's sitting exactly where
Exactly
it was.
was.
Same square footage. It's higher, but it's not bigger.
You guys good for?
I have a question. Did it have a deck in the front before?
It did not have a deck, it had a enclosed porch that went around, that was there. I always wanted to put a deck out, and it was my plan. And I guess that's how when Joe and I were talking about it, so I always wanted to have a deck across the front so I could, you know, see the lake. And so when he drew the new plan up, we drew a deck on it, not knowing that we were, I'm 50 feet from the road. I had no idea that I was within, you know, setback, limits that you guys have now.
So like my question is like, the enclosed deck, was that to the footing, to the foundation, or no, that was like an old porch that you enclosed?
Was the new deck?
No, the porch that was there. The enclosed.
It was on the old foundation.
Okay.
So it had a very high wall, field stone wall in front. And so it was an old, you know, typical cabin of my neighbor. The three neighbors on both sides are both, it's a long porch that turns. It's covered, it's part of the, it could be inside the house, but, you know, it's too cold in winter, too hot in the summer, so it was just sort of a.
So is this new deck that you're proposing replace that?
No, it's from that.
Beyond that,
It's
okay.
beyond that. So we have 3 sliders, and then you go out to the deck.
Okay.
So and it's 10 foot by the whole, big 30 across the front.
Thank you.
All right, address potential environmental concerns before we open it up to the public.
Yeah, I just had an additional preliminary note that there was no GML 239 referral needed under these circumstances. And then we can jump into the short form EAF. So, forgive me, these are more technical questions. And I just ask really to make sure that our paper record is accurate. When you filled out the short form environmental assessment form, question number 1, does the proposed action involve the legislative adoption of a plan, local law, ordinance, administrative rule, or regulation? There was no answer, yes or no. And I can tell you, maybe you weren't sure. Based on the nature of the application, the answer would be no. Are you okay with me confirming
Yes.
your
You know,
application that it's no?
Yes, when I brought the paperwork to Connie to take a look at it, she said she would sort of guide me through. She said, because there were several that were open, I just didn't know the answer.
And that's fine, I understand, and that's why I'm just seeking
Yes.
clarification so that we can have a complete, you know, application before us.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure what the answer
Sure.
was to that.
Same thing, question number 2 is, does the proposed action require a permit, approval, or funding from any other government agency? Again, based on the nature of the application, I can confirm for you that it does not. And so you're okay with us updating your EAF by saying no to number 2?
Yes, sir.
Question number 5, again, it was not answered. Is the proposed action a permitted use under the zoning regulations? Given that this is the reconstruction and or expansion of a residential facility on a residential lot within the same essential location, I can tell you the answer would be yes. Are you okay with me checking off yes to 5A?
Yes.
And is the proposed action 5B consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan? The options are no, yes, or not applicable. Again, this is just a reconstruction and slight expansion of a residential dwelling on residential property, and so it is consistent with the comprehensive plan. So I can check off yes to 5B. Question 13A, does any portion of the site of the proposed action or lands adjoining the proposed action contain wetlands or other water bodies regulated by a federal, state, or local agency? The answer in the EAF, that's a pre-filled check mark from the system that generates these, and it states yes. Are you familiar specifically whether there's any particular wetlands on your property, or is it just you're close and adjacent to the lake?
There's any wetlands on my property. I thought they were talking about the lake or something when I read that. I wasn't sure what that meant.
Okay.
But that was pre-filled for me. when I read it.
I was just curious, because I didn't see anything myself in doing the
No, it's a-
research.
It's a mountain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rock now.
And,
A ledge
yeah.
mountain.
Number 14, it says identify the typical habitat types that occur on or are likely to be found at the project site, and urban was checked off, which clearly this isn't an urban area, it's more suburban.
Yeah, I don't know, I wasn't sure how to answer that. It's forested, it's.
Right.
It's, well, it's not considered urban if there's houses around? I mean, I didn't
Well,
get
no,
that.
urban would be more like, you know, complex city with sidewalks and,
Oh, okay.
and stuff like that. So I'm just gonna, if it's okay with you, correct that to suburban.
Yeah, suburban, okay. I was looking for rural, but I didn't see.
Right, yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, if rural was on there, that would be appropriate, but even suburban is appropriate because it is relatively densely populated with residences, right? So I think suburban is probably the most appropriate here. And question number 15, does the site of the proposed action contain any species of animal or associated habitats listed by the state or federal government as threatened or endangered? And it was pre-selected through the system to identify northern long-eared bat and I believe timber rattler. And so, just so that you're aware, want to make sure that you're aware that there are those species there. And with respect to protection of the bat, you're not supposed to be cutting down any trees that are in excess of 18 inches in diameter at breast height between March 31st and October 31st. So if you need to cut down any large trees during that time period between the spring and the fall, you'll need to contact the building inspector and have them come and review it, make sure that it's not going to endanger some protected species habitat.
Okay,
All right?
there's just one tree left. It's that size.
I hear you.
Very sad.
I saw a bunch of them. They got knocked down over there.
Oh, God.
Okay,
They're gone.
so that's all my comments.
Okay. With that said, we're gonna open it up to the public. Is there anybody here from the public that wants to address this application? Sir?
Hi, how are you? My name is John Nealons. How do you do? I live in the adjoining property of Forest Mills.
I'm sorry, can you spell your last name, please?
Neillands, Nealons. So of course, I've been there since about 2010. I witnessed the tornado, the fires, and the horror that took place there. My concern is this, in the fact that you're able to build something, and then, with no variance correction, you have to come in from there, after the structure is already up.
In this particular application, he explained that the building,
The structure, it looks good.
It's-
My concern is, I've seen things happen in Forest Knolls, that, for instance, just the other day, I saw 10 trees taken down. I asked the tree surgeon, "Did you get a permit?" No. 10 trees taken down. I have bat boxes on my property, I'm wildlife aficionado. I shipped horses for years by airplane. I love the wildlife, and I've seen devastation in this thing. So that's a concern, that there's some oversights. In fact, I don't know if there's enough building inspectors in the town of Warwick to keep an eye on things, but watching trees being taken down or additions being put up and then, it's already up or it's already cut down, and debris, so that's my concern. So how did an architect and the building inspectors, knowing that the variance wasn't proper, allow it to happen?
so, and he's seeking a variance. The building that he wants to construct sits on the same foundation.
It's up, it's built, 4 inches up.
So what
The
he,
deck is up.
what he wants to do is,
And it looks good, I'm just wondering how in fact it can take place when in fact, the variance doesn't allow it. Understand?
I do,
Yeah.
but for us, like, they're before the board to get a variance, not to, we didn't issue a building permit for the deck itself. So sometimes these are caught in an abstract later on. But like I said, they're before us for a variance for the deck.
I see. That was my only concern. Just
So,
what,
I can hopefully help address your question.
okay.
In the official record, we have a letter dated May 20th, 2025 from Anthony Pasculo, the building inspector for the town of Warwick, directed to the applicant here. And it says, "Dear Mr. Ford, the building department has received your proposed survey for the reconstruction of the one-family dwelling. However, it has come to our attention that the proposed front porch setback of 24 feet encroaches into the front yard setback minimum requirements of 30 feet. As a result, in order to proceed with the construction as planned, a variance would be required from the Zoning Board of Appeals." So essentially, for the reconstruction of the house, the applicant would not have needed any variance because he can reconstruct what was already there. It was only in light of the addition of the porch, which required an additional survey. And so once the survey was obtained and reviewed by the building inspector, that's when they came to realize, oh wait, even though you're already pretty far back with this addition of the porch, you're actually going to be closer. And here's the distinction. Sometimes it's really hard to tell when you go do a site inspection. So the building inspector, I'm sure, was out there and looked at it previously. When the building inspector goes out and looks at it, if you look up on the screen here, you'll see I'm moving my cursor. This is the edge of Woods Road. That's where the survey shows the edge of the pavement is, okay? This black line here is actually the front of the property line, and that's the line that we measure off of for front yard setbacks. We don't measure off the edge of the paved road. And so what wound up happening is this shows that the applicant would have had the front of the house is over 30 feet back from the front of their property line. And so it would have been a non-issue. There's a 30-foot setback, and he would have been fine. But now with the addition of the porch, it's probably 50 feet still, even with the porch addition, from the edge of the roadway. But it's only 24 feet from the front edge of this 10-foot porch addition to the front yard property line. And so it was probably a simple oversight on behalf of the building inspector when he initially went out to do a site visit to issue the building permit for the principal dwelling. He looked at it and said, oh, these guys are, 50, almost 60 feet back. It's not going to be an issue. And it was only after reviewing the survey that included the boundary lines and so forth that they realized, oh, wait a minute, in order to add this porch, you need a variance.
Thank you, for explaining that. I'm just as curious as to how it all works. And explain it very well. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? All right, we're gonna leave the public hearing open. Zoning board to discuss secra.
All right, so because this is the reconstruction of a single-family dwelling and the enlargement of a single-family residential dwelling on the residential lot, the action qualifies as a type 2 action under seeker section 617.5 subsection C, paragraphs 2, 11, 16, and 17. Would someone care to make a motion typing the action as a type 2 action with no adverse environmental impact?
So moved.
Motion by Diane. Second. Second by Glenn? Yes, Glenn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. On an inspection, we almost always rely exclusively on Diane for these areas. I just happen to know the area well because I was doing storm cleanup in there too. I was there numerous times. So we had already talked about the character of the neighborhood, beautiful old log homes in there, and most of them sitting within that, the new setback.
And just for the record, Diane, did you actually visit the site?
Yes, I did.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other restrictions, conditions to be imposed? No. Can't think of anything. All right. All right, with that said, we're gonna close the public hearing. Does anybody else, any other comments before we make a motion? All right, with that said,
So, for the ZBA to consider the granting of an area variance, it has to consider the 5 statutory criteria. Question number 1, will an undesirable change be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties be created by the granting of the variance the applicant's requesting? The applicant states no. Does the board agree with the applicant?
yes.
Question number 2, can the benefit that the applicant seeks be achieved by some feasible method other than the variance? The applicant states no. Does the board agree with the applicant?
Yes.
Question number 3, is the requested variance substantial? The applicant states no. Does the board agree with the applicant?
Yes.
It's not substantial.
Yes, I agree with the applicant that
agree
it's,
with that.
yes. Is it-
Gentlemen?
Eric?
Yes, no?
Okay.
Will the proposed variance have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district? The applicant states no. Does the board agree?
Correct.
And question number 5, is the alleged difficulty self-created? The applicant did not answer. How does the board feel?
It's
always
always self-created.
Okay.
Any
Entertain
further
a-
deliberations, questions?
Entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion granting the
Variance
variance
as-
as advertised.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
That was Aaron.
Yes.
Motion to second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Good luck.
Good, thank you.
I'm gonna go to this one next.
Yeah.
Okay. The second item on our agenda was the continued public hearing of Joshua Young and William Young regarding property located in the RU district at 22 Foley Road, Warwick, New York, 10990, and designated on the town tax map as Section 29, Block 1, Lot 39.1 for an area variance from Town Code 164-41A, 1A, for a proposed 80 by 30 detached garage with side open roof overhang and a proposed square footage that exceeds the allowed 1,200 square feet in floor area and 80 feet in greatest median dimension, where only 48 is permitted. Would you like to come up and we had, at the last meeting, we felt that the site visit was very important, because there were neighbors that said that they could see, the property fairly well, from their properties. I went over, the, what's the, lake something, the road that goes in the development, that goes, Lake? Warwick Lake Park, okay. So, from there, it is very difficult to see, and we had talked about this because of the elevation, that your other building and the, house, are gonna be sitting much higher than that building, and it'll be very difficult to see it from any of those properties. On the other side, you would be along, Pine Island Turnpike. There's houses that are there. Those I would say are closer, but the reality in seeing it is, there's quite a bit of foliage in between. If we move towards a variance, I'd make the recommendation that we did put in some, evergreens, primarily, the arborvitae to, just to break up, the size. Since we've met, I've had some discussion with our attorney, and what I want to do is to bring these out in the open to the other members, to see what they have to say, and then to do a little bit of research. We asked this question before with everybody. Time is of the essence. Are you breaking ground tomorrow?
With fall approaching and summer drowning me out, hopefully as quickly as possible to get
Okay.
something going.
All right, so we're gonna go over a few things on, the size of the building, but primarily to, other things that become an issue in the zoning. We have, it's an accessory structure, but the accessory structure is considerably larger. Because it's larger, would it be considered something else than that accessory structure that it's allowed? For example, at one point, is it a storage building? Is it a garage? I was hoping, Jeremy, you can shed some light on some of the definitions.
Sure. So, the difficulty that we have here is identifying, based on the size and scope of the accessories, what's proposed to be an accessory garage structure in the application. The difficulty we have is an accessory residential structure is limited under the town code to 1,200 square feet. We know that. The proposed structure is, in this particular case, and also, if you can clarify for us, because when we were here the last time, we clarified for you the fact that your 20-foot wide by 80-foot long awning that was going to be sticking off of one side actually turned what would have been
30 by 80?
a 3,400 square foot building, I'm sorry, a 2,400 square foot building into a 4,000 square foot building.
Which was, yeah.
And that would actually change the whole nature and dynamic of the application, because now we're looking at a non-residential structure of 4,000 square feet. It's even a different classification under the seeker review, okay? It's no longer considered a residential building, period. And so you were gonna look into and get back to us about whether you were just gonna eliminate that and keep your 2,400 square foot building and not have that extension awning that would expand it to a 4,000 square foot building. So can you please address the board on that issue?
Right, so if that is the main issue and that's gonna prevent me from moving forward, I'm happy to drop the awning and stick with my original 2,400 square feet I was not aware at the time that the awning was going to be considered. And if it's going to change the classification on it, then I can just as easily redesign the plan and lose the awning, because I was not aware of that either. So if that pleases the board, and that puts me back into the category that I thought I was entering into in the first place, and the application filing in the way that it was filed, then that would be an easy enough change for me. And if that
So,
gets me back into the category of what I was looking to do in the
yeah,
first place, that's,
the substantial difference here is you would be applying for a variance for a 2,400 square foot building.
right.
Which is twice the size.
Which
of
is
what allowed.
literally twice the size of what's permitted and permissible.
Right.
But with the awning, it would be more than 3 times the size of what's permissible.
Right.
So, you know, there's a big difference between those two to a large degree. And ultimately, this board can only make a determination based on what you're asking for, okay? So, you know,
Yeah,
if you wanted to ask for the full amount, that doesn't necessarily mean that the board can't grant you a smaller variance. The board has an obligation to grant the smallest variance necessary and appropriate
Right.
to help alleviate whatever hardship or practical difficulty that you may be facing under the zoning code, but they don't necessarily have to give you exactly what you're asking for. And they certainly can't give you more than you're asking for. So would you now officially present that you want to remove the awning altogether? Is that what you're proposing for the board to consider?
If that's going to help me and take me out of the bigger classification and open up an area where I was not, and really in my mind, I wasn't entering in the beginning, then yes, then I would just be satisfied with the awning removed and stick with the original footprint, which would put us at 2,400 square feet.
You know,
I mean, if it's that big of a, because it sounds like the way you're describing it is that you're not able to grant that, it may put me in another category and elevate things to another level with the time factor we're dealing with, and everything is going to be difficult as it is. I'd rather not enter that area.
I'm going to ask another question that's, that we hadn't asked, and it's only because of the size that you're coming up with the 30 by 80. It's an odd size for a large building, you know, 40 by 50, 40 by 60,
Right.
but 30 feet. And you know, and looking at the land,
Yeah.
it would make sense that you couldn't have something wider because you still have to be able to drive around it. So I was just wondering, because what it's gonna come down to is the, primarily it was for the storage of antique cars. That's what you had told us, but I'm still having a problem with the size. So just,
So let me elaborate on why I did
Yeah.
the narrowness but the length, because the spot that you visited, if I push further width-wise, it pushes me into my conservation easement, and it would also push me to open up possibly more forestry than I would like to.
okay,
I want that buffer.
okay,
I don't, so the length, I have the length, and I have about the width, which
Yeah.
we discussed was from previous
Yeah.
constructions. And I don't have to push those easements because that with the smaller width, it stays away from the conservation easement much greater.
yes,
I'd rather have that buffer
Okay.
for environmental reasons.
okay.
So that's it is a bit of an omission, but it just fits the envelope, shall we say.
All right, the other, would be where we just talked about, the storage for antique cars. So one of the other dilemmas is that you're limited to 3 cars, I believe, in our code.
Yeah, so, 164-22 of the town code defines a private garage as being a garage used for storage purposes only and having a capacity of not more than 3 automobiles or not more than 2 automobiles per family housed in the building to which the garage is accessory, whichever is greater. Space therein may be used for not more than 1 commercial vehicle, and space may be rented for not more than 2 vehicles other than the occupants of the building to which the garage is accessory. But the principal part of that is, if it's considered a private garage as an accessory residential structure, then technically, under the code, that would be limited to having a capacity of not more than 3 automobiles for a single-family house, or, you know, if it's a 2-family house, then you could have 2 automobiles per family, or however many families you have living there. But that's the principal concern. And then you have the issue that we're facing here is, while your intent is to use it to store personal automobiles and other items, okay, the issue is a private residential garage specifically says it's limited to not more than 3 automobiles. And then there's this other provision of the town code that says that a storage building is for the holding or safekeeping of goods in a warehouse or other depository to await the happening of some future event or contingency which will call for the removal of the goods. A warehouse is defined as a building or part of a building for storing of goods, wares, and merchandise, whether the owner or whether for the owner or for others, whether it's a public or private warehouse. And an accessory use for residential purposes is a use that's customarily incidental and subordinate to the principal use of a building, being the primary residence, and located at the same lot with such principal use of the building. So the difficulty that we're facing here is we have a separate section of the town code, 164-40 subsection J, regarding generic descriptions. And that says, where permitted or special permit uses are identified by generic words or descriptions, the planning board shall determine whether a specific use shall be construed to be part of such generic class. In making such determination, the planning board shall consider to what extent the proposed use is similar to the class of other uses indicated in the table of use requirements. Specifically, if a use is specifically listed elsewhere in the table of use requirements, it's excluded from a generic classification. And so while we could call it, the applicant says he's proposing a pole barn type garage garage structure. Pole barn is a construction method. There's nothing in the code that defines a barn as being usable, allowed to be used for this purpose or that purpose, except in one location, and that's an accessory to a commercial farming operation. That's the only use that a barn, as defined as such, would be permitted, is when it's being used as an accessory to a commercial farm. And so we can't say that we're authorizing you to have a barn, because that's only usable with commercial farming operations if you call it a barn. If you're calling it a garage for a private residence, then it's limited to 3 automobiles.
Wouldn't it be 3, you said 3,
3 automobiles.
that's in total, not?
Well,
you said
or
is that?
or 2 automobiles per family residing at the residence. So hypothetically, if you had a 2-family residence, you could have up to 4 automobiles in the garage. If you had a 3-family residence, you could have up to 6 automobiles.
Right. But you said a commercial vehicle, rental.
Up to, not more than 1 of those 3 automobiles can be a commercial vehicle.
Oh,
So you
it's
are,
of the 3, not in addition.
correct, you are allowed to store a commercial vehicle in your private garage.
Right, but
Okay.
it's part of the 3.
It's part of the 3.
Okay. Would Which is fine, I mean,
Now, the other two uses that I just read off is storage and warehouse. And with the generic description limitation, it says if there's a use that's specifically listed elsewhere in the table of use requirements, it's excluded from a generic classification. The board is going to be struggling with the idea of, what are we calling this? Is it a private garage for a private residence? It's not commercial, right? So is it, there's only two different kinds of garages. There's a private garage or there's a public garage, which involves, you know, commercial use and renting space or, you know, commercial repair, et cetera. So if it's not a public or commercial garage and it's going to end up with more than 3 automobiles, only one of which could be commercial, then does that constitute a storage building or a warehouse? In either case, a storage building and a warehouse is considered a commercial use, not a residential use. And storage buildings and warehouses under the zoning code are not permitted accessory uses for a residence. And so what this board has to determine is, to what extent does the board have the capacity, given the applicant's stated reason for why he's before the board seeking a variance, to what capacity does this board have the ability to grant an area variance for a private garage that doesn't become more than that and actually change the use, where we're not just granting an area variance, we're actually granting a use variance to authorize storage or warehouse, which is more of a commercial use. So that's unfortunately the,
that's if it
What-
exceeds the 3 vehicles, but if it doesn't exceed the
Correct.
3 vehicles, so it's not, it wouldn't exceed the 3 vehicles, but that doesn't limit me to other items, correct? That's vehicles, that's not motorcycles or bikes,
So that's something
Well-
that,
that,
so you raise an interesting question, because in a garage, an accessory structure that's a garage, we're saying that it's 3 vehicles. But in there, you can have the lawn tractor, you could have
Right.
other household stuff,
Right.
which we're trying to justify the size of what you're building. We've given, in the past few years, because there's new members here, 2 variances on buildings that were almost 5,000 square feet. One of them was a gymnasium for their own kids. Not knowing, you know, in what was allowed for this accessory structure, because we didn't look at it that way. We were always concerned with the kids grow up and then what happens to the building. Something like that ends up being used commercially. So the other one was an artist over on Hamiltonian Road that was almost 5,000 feet, because he was an artist that did huge murals, some of them being almost 40 feet long, and then he would wrap them up, fold them, and then bring them into the city. And again, we gave that variance, and I don't know after this now if it's something that, you know, almost to the point would it have been a use variance or not. So, I don't think the board, you're only at 2,400 square feet after taking off the overhang. And I just, 3 vehicles and some other miscellaneous, the 2,400 square feet is still something that's reasonable. Again, the size, the 30 by 80, you answer that question on why it has to be that way. So I'm talking a lot. Does anybody else have a feeling? Does anybody, you know, it's.
How many letters of opposition do we have to this and/or comments?
Was it this one that we have that many?
yeah, it was,
It was 9.
1
I
second.
believe it
Yeah,
was 9.
that's my recollection. No,
That's my biggest concern, is that we're here to serve the people. and-
So, but what's interesting is that we have that many, but nobody could see it from their house. And after going there, that was the
I can see
case.
where you could see it seasonally.
They
from
were
the field,
rivals.
but This time of year, you're not
Say,
gonna see
Yeah.
it. Seasonally,
To pose opposition, because it's just
Yeah.
not visible.
You know, where we go
there's
down
always an
our,
option to go back to the planning board and apply for a home occupation or a home business, whatever, and go build that route too. Build
I-
that type of, that size building.
I don't, just after knowing the code and what's allowed, I don't know that the planning board could,
No, the planning board would
couldn't,
have to, yeah, kick it back to us because it's still,
it still need a
it's still,
variance.
it's still
Still need a variance.
Yeah.
accessory to a residence, the
They change
primary
the use.
use. They would
Yeah.
have to, I think what you're talking about
Go to a commercial use and then.
would require a change of zoning, which would require the town board, not the planning
I'm sorry.
board. So the applicant, in theory, would have to submit an application for spot zoning approval to modify the
There is other
zoning.
options.
Right, to actually rezone the parcel itself, in order for the planning board to grant something like this without an area variance.
Then you could probably keep the original full-size building perhaps. So there's ways to do it besides coming, well, it could be.
Which is gonna further complicate it and drag it out, which I'm not really, I don't, like I said, I have plenty of commercial property elsewhere. This is really a storage problem for me. Attics are full, crawl spaces are full, basements are full, shelving, war planning, whatever you wanna call it, these days, I don't know, but I'm not sure, but, you know, it's
So-
really a room issue, it's not anything, or else I would've went down that road. I really don't, you know, I'm happy with the 3 additional vehicles, it may not even be, but with the room to store the rest of the stuff and the growth that I'm gonna gain from the building for my family, that's, again, miscellaneous. I don't wanna reinvent the wheel trying to do something that I don't need it to do, if it could be done that way, but. I
Right,
wouldn't need
Diane?
it.
I'm watching the screen and listening to everything, and you're saying that you're gonna take the, overhang off. Now, do we need new plans for that?
No, we had talked about that before, because it's more restrictive than what was presented to us.
So when he goes back to the building inspector with his plans, this is still gonna be on there?
No.
He would have to
He
remove
has to
this
remove
as
it.
per
Yeah,
And then he is only gonna have
because,
the main
two,
building.
two end entrances and then 2 doors,
and again,
correct?
when we give the variance will be for a building that will be 30 by 80. And then when he presents those to the building inspector will
Okay.
look, and it has to be the same or less than 30 by 80. So, I don't want to hold this over, but I can also see that the board is mixed. I think what I would really like to see from you is on the 30 by 80 is exactly what you think is going in there.
Yeah.
And you could probably, because Connie's really good, if you put it in a letter format, gave it to Connie, then she can send it to us, it will become part of the record here.
Right.
But if we're gonna give the variance, truly, we have to know what's gonna be in there that's gonna justify that size. I mean, and again, it might not change somebody else's mind because it's bigger and there was opposition, but like I said, when we have opposition, a lot of times they get they have 9 letters, and I'm sorry, there is one piece of property that's there from those 9 letters that you could see your house and the other barn, and you can't see the pool because it drops downhill, and you're not gonna be able to see this because it's down the hill further. So,
Or they don't even adjoin. Is that fair
Yeah.
to say that
So-
9 letters aren't even adjoining properties? They don't
Yes.
touch my property whatsoever? So I mean,
yes,
that's a major,
so,
you know, to have a gripe with something that doesn't even touch the property is just rivalry to somebody else's cause of my business.
My feeling is just that the code was, designed for a reason.
Yeah, of
And
course.
and if you go to, I would be very comfortable with being in favor of like a 30 by 50, 1,500 square feet would give you 20-30% more than the code allows. But even to go to 2,400, you're still asking for 100% more than what the code allows.
1200.
You're doubling it. It's gonna be 2,400.
2,400,
It's
yeah.
100% more.
Because in reality, it's really not that much room, 1,200 square feet. I mean,
I mean,
I know what it is,
Yeah.
it's just
I mean,
it's just
it's-
where we live.
with 3 cars in it,
it's not.
it's your back, I mean, I'm dealing in, when I build something with 2,400 square feet driveway or 1,200 square feet drive, you can't turn the car around.
Just
1,200 square feet, as far as the area goes. So you start stacking shelves and you put 2 or 3 vehicles in there, at best, motorcycles, you're gonna be lucky to, so even though it looks like it's doubling, it's tight space. It's really not as big or as roomy as you might think when you see the footprint.
I get what he's saying.
Yeah.
It's like what Glenn is saying, is my concern is it's normally what 15% is what we normally go over. So 100%, 20% or something.
Sure.
We're way over that, and I understand what you're
Yeah,
saying.
it's
I
just
know
not,
the
it's
limits.
just not a lot of,
It's just
when you
for-
lay the confined
for
space
us,
out.
It seems like a lot of it to give.
Yeah, and in reality, it's not.
But for us, our point of view.
Yeah, no, of course,
Not this, not
just
your.
going by the numbers, but
Yeah, that's our.
physically moving in that space, if you were to lay that out in a driveway, like we do every day, 1,200 square feet is absolutely nothing. I mean, you could barely K-turn a car or a large pickup truck in that area comfortably. So, on the paper,
I just, one other small thing, because we bring this up occasionally, is building 2 1,200 square foot buildings.
That's up
It's the option that he builds 200, that he doesn't need a variance from us, and ultimately, it takes up more space because there has to be space in between them. So we always say, yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
But
So-
dividing them.
So, we always say that's an option, but, and then we always weigh out the option, so do we have 2 or 3 of these 1,200 square foot buildings, or do we just have, one larger one? I'm just,
Come back to Jeremy's point, with the car storage with 3 vehicles, and that can go 3 buildings and have 9 cars on a residential lot.
you would still be limited to the 3 vehicles, regardless of how many buildings.
Yeah.
That's part of the problem that we've addressed previously about
I know, so we go
total
on for
square
years.
footage of all the combined accessory structures on a single residential property.
So,
I wish I didn't have to push for it, but
So do we.
we have,
So-
the need, if the need is driving me, because I
Yeah,
wish
but-
I wasn't at that point. but-
I'm sorry,
that's all right, you keep looking the other way.
because
You know?
I think
Okay.
they're done. I think they're done.
I'm looking at the plan that you gave
Yes,
us
ma'am.
with the drawing.
Right, that's the area.
That's where you're gonna put it.
Yeah, that's about the area that
Yeah.
he and I walked, yeah.
How are you getting to these doors? There's no driveway to these doors.
Right, there's a driveway from here that was cut in for the pool construction that was previously done.
That's not on here.
Yeah, that's not on there. It's an access, gravel. It's not a driveway, it's just gravel. That comes in from the front here, down to this area, because this area here on the side is where the pool was constructed, so they had to access to build it's a small access road.
Okay, so you put in 2 doors. How are you gonna get into that one?
Yeah, well, it would be just so, the 14-foot doors are just so you can get in and out easily with any item, whether it's a pickup or I just didn't want to close myself in on the back end, or, you know, I felt that having bigger doors, or you can get things in and out easily. Again, to my point, that it sounds big, it's really not big as far as swinging or maneuvering even one vehicle. I mean, vehicles, a large pickup is 22, 24 feet long. So if I were to try to back in and swing that around the garage, I don't think you could turn it around.
Diane, in looking, because it's narrow,
Yeah,
with the construction that he has in there, you drive alongside of the building, where he's, and best example is where he's taking off the overhang.
yeah.
There's plenty of room to drive now alongside, and it's all
Yeah,
clear.
Yeah, now.
It's cleared right to the wood lot. There's plenty of room to drive alongside the building to get to the other side.
Yeah, you don't even
I
need
still, I have a problem with the size.
Okay. All right, so, if, a list of stuff that you want stored in the buildings,
Okay.
and then, we can take a look and see about, and the variance, you know, like our attorney had said,
Again, one of the things that, the reason the chairman is asking for, you know, a more detailed list of what you plan on storing in the buildings is because in order for the board to grant the variance, you have to establish to the satisfaction of the board that you're facing some sort of particular and unique hardship or limitation that's imposed by the code, and you need to establish for the benefit of the board what exactly that hardship or practical difficulty is. In order for them to grant you a variance, you're asking for a variance of 100% of the allowable square footage. So what really is the practical difficulty? If you can identify that for the board, then it gives them at least something to consider to base whether or not they can grant the full amount that you're asking for.
Well, even though we backed off, we just lost how many square feet now,
Yes.
so now we're down even,
You're still 100%.
right, but we were
You were,
200%.
yeah.
So,
No, you were at 300%.
Or 300, yeah.
Yeah.
So I backed off to the point where we're losing that. So you need a list of, and I mean, and that
This-
gets presented to,
I would think the best thing to do, is to get it to Connie, and then she'll end up emailing it to us. She's constantly emailing letters that come in for different applications. And then we'll at least have a chance to look at it before, so hopefully we can think individually, on, you know, is this realistic or not? And then when we're together, we can when we have a quorum, we can discuss it. We can't, if there's three of us, we can't discuss the application, but I could meet with one other person and say, okay, this is reasonable for this, this, and this. So, at least, again, as the attorney said, because we need something to justify the size, and then, you know, we'll go from there. So, and again, I really thought that we would be making a decision tonight.
yeah.
But
trying to
with
get
so much information that the attorney gave us, that, it's all new to us, I would rather just have the time to think about it. We'd probably end up giving you a call and asking some questions, but,
Right,
but
right.
I get, the decision will definitely happen next month.
Okay, so just with the vehicle size alone, for the three vehicles, we're at, let's just say it's the allowable three vehicles. That's 800 square feet right there. Just to give you a concept of, so if we take 2,400, which I'm asking for, and we're taking away 800 square feet right off the get-go, that's almost 1,600 square feet left for anything. Just to give you an idea of,
Yes.
it's not a lot of room. If it's laid out in front of you and you see it, it's not a lot of room. Pictures help with the other items, because, I mean, some of them have to be the bike collection, the vintage motorcycles. Photographs are gonna help if we
Yeah.
print off some photographs, give it to, because we're gonna
Absolutely.
lose the other
Yeah.
footage easily, would be
Yeah.
my guess.
Okay, so like I said, anything you can do, so at least we have something to hang our hat on. If we make a decision and give the variance,
Right.
what you're looking for is, it might turn out to be a little bit less, but like I said, let's at least
Okay.
have that.
And that gets sent to Connie,
Send to Connie first, and then, because it'll get to us sooner.
and then an email or something?
Yeah, that, as opposed to you bringing it to the next meeting and then we're looking at it.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. And when is the next meeting?
July 28th.
Yeah.
And we have to attend that, or you may have a decision before then based on.
We
the
will make a
information?
decision before that, because the public hearing is still open.
Gotcha, okay.
We will not, we'll make the decision that night. We'll probably have after you providing us stuff, all of us individually will probably have an idea of where we're going.
Gotcha. Okay,
Okay,
fair enough. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Let's get in soon amount of water. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the public hearing of Dale A. Creamer and Sydney Creamer regarding property located in the MT District at 491 Newport Bridge Road, Pine Island, New York, 10969, and designated on the town tax map as Section 10, Block 1, Lot 66.72, for an area variance from Town Code 164-41A, 1A, for a proposed 72 by 48 detached garage with side open roof overhang and proposed square footage that exceeds the allowable 1,200 square feet in floor area and 80 feet in its greatest median dimension, where only 48 are permitted. Continued from April 28th, 2025. Okay.
Good evening, Keith Widger from Engineering Surveying Properties. Since the board's last seen the application, we revised the application to give definition or a more adequate definition listing the reason for the large structure being for the storage of the camper trailer. We revised the ag data statement, listing it as a 72 by 48 structure with an 8 by 25 overhang on two sides for a total square footage of 3792. On a 57.8 acre property. And we subsequently revised the plans to also provide the additional dimensions, the square footage, to describe the overhang on the structure itself, and then the square footage of the structure.
All right, the public hearing was still open from this application. Does anybody have any questions? Then we know why they were revised. We had quite a few questions on overhangs, et cetera. Everybody's good?
So, I did want to just note for the record, at the last meeting, there was GML 239 referral was in fact needed because the property was within 500 feet of Pochuck State Forest Park. That was submitted to the Orange County Planning Department, and on May 1st of 2025, the town received a response from Orange County Planning stating that the Planning Department has reviewed the submitted materials regarding the appeal for an area variance on a 57-acre parcel in the Mountain Zoning District, while the Zoning Board of Appeals must weigh the local issues in balancing the needs of the applicant with potential impacts on the surrounding area. The it does not appear that intermunicipal or countywide impacts would result if the board finds that granting relief is warranted and the county made a recommendation of making a local determination without their further input.
Did we need anything on this federal wetland?
I'm sorry, Diane, I didn't hear you.
Did we need anything on this federal? I'm sorry. Did we need, I see we have the ridge line. What about the wetland? It's federal.
Yeah, so we show the wetland limit line on the plans, and we
Yeah.
are keeping a buffer between the wetlands themselves. And that was a wetland delineation done by, I believe, by ERS.
So you're only 15 feet from the woodland.
No, usually there's, the delineation is usually, is it 200 feet from a wetland?
No, that would, if it was a DEC state regulated wetland, then you would have to be 100 feet. If it's a federal or Army Corps jurisdictional wetland, there is no offset. You're actually allowed to disturb up to 1/10 of an acre, filing a permit with the Army Corps of Engineers. But we're keeping 15 feet, even though there is no setback requirements from a federal wetland.
On the DEC, for some reason, the number of 12.4 acres in size is where the DEC gets in
Jurisdiction.
jurisdiction.
Yeah.
But the Army Corps of Engineers is down to 1/3 of an acre. So a huge difference. But when we do have wetlands, you really have to know
Yeah.
the size, and in which case, this is pretty small. Does anyone have any questions? Right now, the public hearing is still open. Anything yet? Because from what I remember previously, we talked about why the building was so big. The one of them was for an RV, which did a garage specify, and I don't want to bring this up and dwell on it.
It doesn't specify the type of vehicles, other
Vehicles.
than only one may be commercial.
Okay. And then the other one, I believe, was a boat.
Yes, so it was a 45-foot long camper, and then a 35-foot boat with trailer.
Okay.
And then other miscellaneous, tractors and other lawn equipment.
Just on the other though was, I'm trying to remember because of the drawing, there was a question of the actual size, and then that was on the revised plans now, so that we know on the variance that we're given exactly the square footage that we have to give.
Right, so the variance that's being requested here, we did the calculations at the last meeting, would be 3,000, well, the total square footage, the footprint would be 3,792 square feet, including a 336 square foot overhang with the outdoor canopies on the
Okay.
corner.
All right. And again, I don't want to mix the applications between this one and the other one, because this one is considerably larger than the other application. But just because you brought this up, I don't know how a boat fits into into this application for storage in a building. I don't think so. It has a registration, but it's,
Registration, it has to have a license, it's
A motor vehicle would be a self-propelled. Right, but a motor vehicle would pass defined in the zoning code.
he's helping you, I wouldn't go any further than that.
Well, it's not, but it's not a car, but it's also not
It's
a motor vehicle.
because,
It's a vessel.
It's a water vessel.
so, no more than 3 automobiles. And again, I don't want to dwell on this, but we have a problem with the other application, and if this guy now comes before us and says, well, there's 3 cars and a boat and an RV, I don't know how we can say no if we're giving it to somebody else. And again,
Each one's individual.
it is. All I'm saying is that this particular variance is larger than the one that he's looking for. And we have a problem saying you're limited to 3 automobiles. So, can you help us out?
Well, I think part of
A
my
little bit?
problem was the complaints against the other.
Same with that.
And with this one, I don't think we,
And I completely understand the complaints, but
I'm saying,
I'm,
all the neighbors were male,
Yeah, we're over 200 feet from the property line.
and no one can see it from,
That's my correct, like I said, it's a big difference because nobody's really complaining about it.
So,
do I
Where-
think it's still too large?
yes, yeah,
But-
so this is the property, and it actually goes beyond the map here. If residence is constructed here, this would be the garage structure.
There's, you can't
The
see that
nearest neighbor would be this house, or this house.
anytime. You
And
can't see.
these properties go all the way to the back, which is all state park. That's the,
Pocha.
Pocha.
Thank you. So it's not like there's gonna be any other construction that happens in the back of these properties. They've all been completely built. There is a house up in this side of the structure, but it's on the complete opposite side. But there is over 200, I think it's 245 feet, if I remember correctly, to the property line itself. So there's no way you're gonna see this.
We were good with that.
Okay.
You explained before. What I'm saying is, yeah, we had 9 letters, and I want everybody to be clear on this. We had 9 letters, and out of the 9, 8 of them could never see this structure.
I
So-
disagree, I don't think never, I think seasonally, you can see it. So, a couple can, for sure. But seasonally.
Okay. I'm gonna disagree only because of the drop-off, and there's a house blocking the view of it. And again, I don't wanna mix it up with the other one, but because people send letters and then we go through our criteria, we say detriment to nearby property owners, there's a detriment to the nearby property owner that maybe you could see it?
It's their opinion.
But that's for us to make that decision.
It's true.
Okay. I'm not gonna go any more on that. Okay. You don't have a problem. You have plenty of space, can't see you, satellite. Drone.
That's trespass.
So, just the one quick question on, in a garage, are you allowed to store a boat? Now, I'm gonna help you out.
Yeah, the code says automobiles technically,
Yes.
but I can't imagine why the building inspector would object to a boat as opposed to an auto, a car.
Okay, so, if our code,
They do both get registered.
if our code does not define boat storage, we have the ability to interpret if it would be allowed to be stored in a garage.
Sure.
Okay,
So are you saying that the motor home and the boat, that's 2?
mm-hmm,
So he's only allowed to store 1 more car in there?
the way we're interpreting it, yes, that's correct.
Okay. That's still big
It's
for
huge.
the motor home and the boat
It,
and 1 vehicle.
it is, but it's not, but for the size of what he's putting in there, it's not.
Yeah, it
It's-
is.
It's big, but to hold those 2, it's not big.
For a 45-foot camper trailer,
very
and you
big.
have 48 feet
Right.
in a garage, that gives you just enough room to even just get around the trailer. Because if you park it in the middle, you have 1.5 feet on the wall and 1.5 feet by the door.
We know that, but it only takes
Yeah.
up 10 feet to the 72.
Right, but
And
you
the
still
boat
need to
only-
get it in, and we're not,
Yeah.
you know, traversing inside the structure, so
And the
there's,
boat takes up another 10, so we still have 52 feet.
but there's
48
only,
feet.
yeah, so in the architectural plan that was provided, that I sent to you way back when, there's 3 bays. So bay 1, camper trailer, bay 2, boat, bay 3, tractors, other miscellaneous stuff.
So
that you're
there's
gonna-
3 bays.
There's 3 bays.
If I may, I want to hear what he has to say.
Sorry.
That's
That's
okay. Oh,
clarify.
your name?
Dale Kramer.
Okay.
So camper trailer, like you said, 45 foot long, 11 foot wide.
Right.
Boat, 35, beam is about 13, you know what I mean? So it's wider than a normal boat, plus the spacing and you can, right? Then tractor, I have it's an 8-wheel tractor. I have a skid steer, so no actual cars are being parked in there. I have my garage, I have 2 cars.
Okay.
Skid steer and an excavator, and then my kids' stuff, all staying. And then I have a little section left for shelving.
Okay. Just so the rest of the board knows, I don't have a problem with the application at all, but I just want to make sure, in looking at the other application where we have a problem with it, the difference between them, I don't want to hear about 9 letters. I want to hear, is it a detriment to nearby property owners?
But it's
Well,
not,
I
we
think it is.
shouldn't
If you-
have
if you see a
anything to
building
do
in your
with
house,
the
it's a
other
detriment.
application. You keep saying the other application. The other application is a separate entity.
It
We will
is.
discuss that on its own.
Okay,
It has nothing to do with this one.
that is correct. That's why I said I don't have a problem with this one.
Then stop saying the other application.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Okay, does anybody have any other questions?
I think they should concede a little bit of square footage just to be fair to the board. Would be my thought. Just, again, we're going through.
The owner said it too, but when you put the overhang and all that, it's 80 feet, and it just,
Again, we're going through 4,000 square. 2,400 is allowed.
Is the overhang necessary?
I was just gonna put the chairs under it, and like sit there.
Well, the chairs is like the smallest part of the whole.
Well, no, the porch.
Oh, the long porch.
Yeah, the porch, I mean, that was, it's not like necessarily, it's just the chairs and pile pots.
And what's the square footage of that?
336.
It sounds big, but it's.
No, that's.
I mean, I'm the only one that looks at it, I just wanted to.
So-
Decent, you know?
So the one thing, it's unfortunate, the way the code is read, that the square footage, because it has what might be the ground, the footings, the poles holding up in an overhang, and because it has that on overhang, unfortunately, it's added on as square footage. But if you think about it, it is open space. So, again, you know, we have the ability to interpret the code a
Let me ask you
bit.
Question, if I remove the post, and it's,
Cantilever.
exactly.
It's, we've had this question before, but it's still considered, it's still considered to be part of the square footage.
There's a separate provision in the code that says essentially it's only considered an eave of a structure if it doesn't extend more than 3 feet from the wall of the building. Anything more than 3 feet is considered an extension of the structure itself.
Can I shrink it, like, I'd like some kind of coverage, just to sit there, I mean, if I shrink, I mean, I don't know if it does.
I wasn't concerned with that, but that part is actually aesthetically pleasing to your building.
And that's what I was,
I'm just looking at the overall square footage of the building.
I can't
A
go,
little can be built to 40 to 70
so,
to 60.
the issue, and so my original, just so you know, I mean, if this matters to you, but for me, it did. The reason for the jump is because I think they're 10-foot spans, so, you in order to shrink it, I had to get a custom span, and it increased the price like substantially to do that. So I stay within a reasonable price to keep it at that size. And, because I originally did have it smaller, and they're like, listen, if you go up X amount of feet, it's not a custom size anymore, it drops down, like, it's like 40 grand.
And that includes the
But
overhang?
your span is the 48 feet, which,
Um,
I run a
even-
truss is 80 for a home.
Even across, I mean, I
Even
guess
across.
because of the way that the panels, this is what they're telling me, because I didn't want it, not that I didn't want it, but I wasn't gonna go as long, because it does approach, like, if you zoom out a little bit, you can see my house. It is, my house looks right at it. I mean, this is my porch. So all I'm looking at is that, so I wanted it this way a little bit more, but it became substantially more expensive. The length as in,
The 72 to the inside.
what would make,
The alternative is he can construct 4 24 by 48 structures and would need a ZBA variance and separate them 2 feet apart from each other. And then it would look like storage sheds, like, self-storage as he's looking at. It's also gonna be more expensive to construct because you're buying more exterior panels, windows and siding and everything else. So it is a cheaper alternative to do it in a singular structure. The other alternative is he could always go for an agricultural exemption for the property, being 50-something acres, and he can build this structure without a building permit. So there are alternatives that could be sought. He was trying to, essentially do the right thing by getting the ZBA variance and not having to kind of go through back channels.
I was just trying to do that.
Well, you just don't get an agricultural variance just because you have acreage, you have to prove it's for agricultural use as well. You just don't get the variance.
He's got 57 acres, it's not gonna be a hard sell to
may be.
get some income to show agricultural use. People are able to do a lot less. I'm sure we can selective timber harvest in 57 acres and easily make the.
You only need 50 acres for the 480As.
That was one of the selling features of what I wanted. But I really,
Great.
I don't want to do that.
Yes.
I mean, I like the woods, I like the way it looks, it's nice, it's quiet. So I'm just trying to, I don't even want to build 2 structures, I just want one structure. I don't want to have these little barns or garages all over the place, just taking up more area, really. Just trying to keep it limited.
We seem to have a little opposition on the size of this. I'm fine with it. Diane,
If the overhang, we're in the same situation. If that overhang wasn't there, it would drop it down.
Do you have the picture of it?
No, his overhang is very small, it's only in the front.
yeah.
So it's not that big.
No, it's a
No.
little sitting area.
Yeah, if you don't mind, because for whatever reason, I didn't see it in my file.
It's a little sitting area.
I mean, I don't mind shrinking that, I mean, it's not, I just did it so that it was evenly keeled, that's all I did. I mean, I can shorten that up, I mean, it doesn't really gain anybody too much. I can even contain it to one side of the building. I think I sent the 3D rendering of what it actually is, I'm trying to keep it all earth tone colors. Even though we're having a ridge line, I still follow that in the house.
saying I'm completely against it, I'm just trying to.
I'd rather not build two structures, you know what I mean?
But if you went for, if you were in the ag, if you did it legally, you could,
Right now, I'm just, I could do it, no problem, but then I gotta
Well,
wipe out
maybe.
forests and stuff like that. I don't have to do anything to build this structure right now, except for a few trees that.
well, you have to get a variance from us.
Well,
And a building permit.
Yeah.
yes, you know what I'm saying.
Whereas if you went the other way, you don't need relief from a zoning board.
there it
You don't
is.
get the,
But I have to then,
Within the
yeah, it's way more than what I would like.
3 with a door.
It's 3 with the door.
3 what?
So where's the overhang? Where's
That's it right here, the little
that
overhang.
little bit?
Yep.
the overhang's a little
It's
portion.
just on the corner.
It's a little
So-
itty bitty thing?
So that's,
I thought we were looking at the whole length of the,
No, it's just around this corner.
okay.
that was
So
the,
that's it, it's actually 2 bays now, it's not 1. I removed up, so,
What did you do?
I removed one of the garage doors, and I shifted it more center. Yeah, these are 12 by 12s, I wanna say, or 12 by 14 high, I just did 2 14 by 14s. Again, just trying to cut across a little bit.
So with the 2 doors,
So I can fit the trailer on dollies and push it over, and the boat can go in one, and then everything else goes around that.
the RV goes in which one?
It would be on the left, that's the easiest one.
Okay. Because that would take up the,
Yeah,
the whole
so
width of it.
Right here, the whole depth, yeah.
So there's nothing where it is right now, I mean, that is exactly how it looks is what it is, aside from the asphalt.
There's no sense getting rid of that little overhang.
no,
No.
I didn't want to say it because the other application's overhang
Well,
was
the
big.
other
I just didn't want to
overhang
talk
is-
about that again.
Don't mention the other.
Yeah, I had to.
I'm okay.
Okay. Okay. I mean, 3 of us seem to be okay with the application, so I think we'll move forward and see what we come up with when we go through our criteria and the rest of the stuff. Public hearing is still open, but, did we get as far as,
We did type it in the last meeting.
Okay.
It's typed as a type 2 action, specifically after doing the recalculations with the additional square footage
okay,
of the 336 square foot overhang for a combined total overall footprint of 3,792 square feet. And therefore, it qualifies as a type 2 action under seeker section 617.5C, subsection 9, which is,
okay. Oh,
well, we did it at the last meeting. We covered seeker already. We already did a resolution approving it as a type 2 action.
And that was the threshold of 4,000 square feet.
Correct, under 4,000 square foot residential structure.
okay, with that, we had talked about on the site visit, I did not go onto the property to see where this went because of, what you had showed us last time on the size, and for whatever reason, I know the lot, and I know the area well. So, so I didn't feel it was necessary to actually go onto the site itself. Let's see, on number 10, the ZBA to consider use restrictions and any other conditions to be imposed. So, ordinarily in an application, there might be screening. I don't see any reason for that at all. Architecturally, the thing is not, especially with the overhang patio sitting area, makes it look a lot better. And, so I know it adds on to the square footage, but it just doesn't make it look like a box. Anybody else have any comments then on that? For any other restrictions? If not, I'm gonna close the public hearing. And are there any other discussions with the public hearing closed? Okay. Would you like to go through the criteria?
Okay.
Okay.
So in the granting of an area variance, the zoning board has to consider the 5 statutory criteria. Question number 1, will an undesirable change be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties be created by the granting of the variance requested by the applicant? The applicant states no, and the reason given: the detached garage is 234 feet away from rear property lines and 720 feet away from the front property line. The lot is also heavily wooded, so neighboring properties won't see the detached garage. Does the board agree with the applicant that it will not produce an undesirable change in the neighborhood, character of the neighborhood, or detriment to nearby properties?
Yes.
Question 2, can the benefit that the applicant seeks be achieved by some feasible method other than the variance? The applicant states yes, and the reason given that it could be made smaller to meet the code with multiple buildings. Does the board agree with the applicant?
To an extent, yes.
Okay. Question 3, is the required variance substantial? The applicant states yes, and the reason given: the square footage exceeds the maximum area and largest building dimension. Does the board agree with the applicant?
Yes.
Question 4, will the proposed variance have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district? The applicant states no, and the reason given: there's no impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood because the lot is very large and the detached garage is located in a wooded area. Does the board agree with the applicant?
Yes.
Question number 5, is the alleged difficulty self-created? The applicant states yes, and the reason given: the owner applicant proposing new structure exceeding the maximum accessory building requirements. Does the board agree with the applicant?
Yes. A question for you, because we don't usually see this. With the size of the building and the watershed, is there a requirement for water mediation, stormwater?
Not for this, because it's, the land disturbance for this application is under an acre. However, during the initial construction of this dwelling, the driveway, the dwelling itself did exceed an acre, and there was stormwater conveyances, rain gardens, and swales along the driveway.
But and this is more for me just to know in the future, it's just the size of the building and the size of the roof. Is there a threshold that there has to be something with the gutter system and the runoff?
No. 1 acre is typically considered a minimum threshold.
Okay, all right,
For residential subdivisions, it goes to 1 acre. Between 1 and 5, you have to do erosion control
Yes.
measures. After 5 acres, then you can do the full complete SWIP, which
Yes.
requires the
Okay.
stormwater ponds and everything else. But
okay.
for the most part, single-family residential, unless there is an ordinance in the, or something in the code that prohibits or limits the area disturbance, which is not.
Okay. And again, that was just more for me, it's one of the first times we were doing a building this big, and I just wondered if it was something that we should address. Okay, all right, without any further discussion, does somebody want to make a motion to approve tonight?
Someone else as advertised.
Diane with the motion, second by Bill. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
Thank you.
Got minutes of the last meeting?
Oh, we're supposed to do that
Yep.
first.
Yeah, you're supposed to. We need to get that put on the agenda.
We have a motion, second by Diane. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Minutes, so we had, motion by
Yes,
Aaron and second by Diane.
Second by Diane. All right, I'll go turn off, I'm not recording.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Oh, motion to adjourn? Yes.